What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. I am your host, TJ Zwarych, and it is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. We've been having a lot of fun each week with our live shows covering Agatha all along, now streaming wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Hey, YouTube, if you're watching us there, smash the like button, hit the notification bell, and make sure you subscribe to the Agents of Fandom. And also check us out on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. We got a very special show lined up today. We're talking episode 2 of The Penguin Inside Man, and we got quite the crew. 4 agents ready to rock. Joining me, as always, on the Agatha pods, but both of our first time on a Penguin show this year, Damon Gray. How you doing, Damon?
I'm ready to talk about this fantastic show because it is just so good. It's so good.
And both Damon as well as our other co-hosts today are both the co-hosts of the Comic Corner podcast. And so I will be relying on you guys when I throw out some crazy comic theories for you guys to connect the dots and tell me
You're
if I have
missing
any
the DC
basis.
guy, by the way.
I know, but I need you guys to channel your AF. I need you guys to channel your AF and tell me if I'm crazy or not. Fat Thor, how you doing today?
I am fantastic. I have to echo my co-host Damon here. This show is just fantastic, so I'm really excited to get into this with you guys today.
You may have met him long ago in the Marvel streets with the 15 Minutes of Marvel podcast. You know him from 24 Minutes of A24 and now the Movie Draft podcast. Frequent guest. Writer of many, many incredible articles up on agentsfandom.com, including a plethora of films from the Toronto International Film Festival this year, Ethan Simmie.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here. I haven't talked comic book shows, movies in a very long time, so you guys are getting me out of my element, and I'm glad to be talking about The Penguin, a show that I think is pretty good so far.
I saw you tweeting about it, about how you were excited to watch, and so as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, we got to make this happen. We got to bring Ethan in because I love podcasting with you, and we don't get the chance near as often as we used to. But before we dive into The Penguin, I wanted to have another segment of Watcha Watchin. We obviously amend it for what you're reading, what you're playing, if you're playing some video games. We all work in this industry. We wish it would be for more of a living, but we're spending our time and our effort and our money into it anyways. And so focusing more on what we're doing for our own enjoyment, for fun, but obviously whatever you're doing in general. Damon, I'll start with you. What you been watching?
Well, I've just been on my horror kick for the last 3-4 months. It's been very fun. And it's taken me in a direction I wouldn't necessarily call it horror, but interesting. Ethan will love this. I saw the TV Glow the other week.
Oh, I literally watched that last night, Damon. That was my third time watching it last night.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So it was pretty good. And it's really fun going into a movie like that, especially a movie like that, where you're like, I saw the trailers for it in theaters, and that's all I know about it. So you go in, and you watch it, and you're trying to soak it all in, and then it ends, and you're like, what did I just watch? Let me see what other people think about it. And then you read other people's thoughts, and you're like, wow, that was a movie that had some crazy internal messages to it that most of which I didn't pick up. So, good movie. I do recommend.
Awesome. I like it. And what about in the comic streets? You've been reading anything new? Give me a little preview for what could come in Comic Corner this week.
Comic Corner this week, we got some good DC stuff. So good for the Penguin folks. DC Absolute Power number 4, which is the finale of this big Absolute Power event, is out this week. But most importantly, DC All-In Special, setting up this new All-In initiative. So maybe a little bit of this Absolute Universe and whatever they're doing in the main continuity as well. It's a very exciting time for DC. October is the kickoff of everything DC All-In. So yes, we do have those new Absolute Batmans, which are really jacked Batman, and Absolute Wonder Woman, which I read, and it is excellent. So go check that out. Final Order cutoff has already happened, unfortunately. So make sure you go to your comic shop if you haven't done so already the day it releases and pick it up.
And you can check out Damon's interview with the author of that book, aka his very best friend in the world, Kelly Thompson. And they get a good chat about Absolute Wonder Woman. We'll chat a little. My name is Jeff. Chat a little Jeff the Land Shark. And so make sure you check that one out. Fat Thor, how about you? What you been watching?
Well, like, I think you hit it on the head perfectly. You know, with what we do, we pretty much are watching everything. I really enjoyed last week's Agatha. I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, but the third one really sold me on it. And I mean, I've really just been reading a lot, honestly, making my way through Lord of the Rings again. I'm reading Frankenstein, started that for spooky season. And actually, I have it right next to me, Swamp Thing. It's not popping up. Alan Moore, Swamp Thing. Perfect for spooky season. Great, great read. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing. Oh, and Far Cry Primal. I've been playing that first time playthrough, and it is fantastic. I'm absolutely loving it.
Heck yeah. Absolutely love it. Ethan, how about you? I'm interested to hear what you've been watching because you have a wide range of films that you're typically diving into.
Yeah, for sure. Like I mentioned, I did actually rewatch. I saw the TV Glow last night. That was my third watch of the year. And I will just quickly say I think it's the most important movie that's been made in the last 25 years. Not to hype it up, but I think it is quite an immaculate piece of art. I've been going back through a lot of Batman stuff since we are in a Penguin pod. I will plug that we have a Batman collaborative draft coming up on the Movie Draft podcast here in a few weeks after this show goes live. So my co-host and I and a guest will work together with air quotes. And we have vetoes and special powers and all kinds of drafting abilities to determine a list of the 11 best Batman movies. So I've been going back through rewatching a lot of the stuff from the 90s, a lot of the Joel Schumacher stuff, and the Batman, of course. And I'll just give one more plug to something that's coming out of TIFF pretty soon. I'll say there's 2 movies worth mentioning: Conclave and a movie called Queer. Conclave is basically Succession meets Choosing the New Pope. And then Queer is a second film from Luca Guadagnino starring Daniel Craig. And it is about a lost soul, I think is the best way to put it. Those movies come out respectively, I think at the end of October and then November for Queer. So keep your eyes peeled for those movies. If you're trying to see some new stuff, I highly recommend them.
Awesome. Hell yeah. And for me, I've been very busy with Only Murders in the Building, Agatha, the Penguin for writing purposes, but kind of comfort background stuff. I've been rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender. My wife is watching The Good Wife, and I'm catching a lot of that one. And I want to say about The Good Wife, Michael J. Fox is a fucking incredible actor. So his character, Lewis Canning, in this show has something called tardive dyskinesia, which accounts for like the body movements. And so he's playing a character with similar symptoms to his real life illness. And he just does an absolutely incredible job. So I want to shout out Michael J. Fox in that one. But I also just watched Rebel Ridge for the first time. Really, really enjoy that one. Rumors are, speaking of DC, that Aaron Pierre, the main character, is the front runner for Jon Stewart, Green Lantern. And so I do think he'd be wonderful in that role. He's by far the best part about Rebel Ridge. I think the first 2 acts of that movie are 10 out of 10, like just absolutely incredible. They lost me in the 3rd act. I didn't like how the movie ended. I didn't think it was written very well, how it came to a conclusion. Very much, oh shit, look how corrupt the system is. Look how corrupt the system is. We got to burn the system down all movie until we get to the end. And it's very much, oh, there are some good guys within the system. And I just didn't really vibe with that. I thought it kind of set up something in the first 2 acts that it didn't deliver with in the 3rd. But Aaron Pierre was absolutely incredible. And I really, really enjoyed that movie as a whole. Like I said, first 2 acts I thought were basically perfect. 10 out of 10. going in reverse order here. Ethan, I want to start with you. First two episodes of The Penguin kind of sounds like you may be the least high on it out of the group. What have been your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I don't want to come on the pod and bring you guys down. That's not my goal today, but I thought the first episode of The Penguin, since I wasn't on that episode, I thought it was very, very, very good. I thought it set the tone, it set the bar quite high for The Penguin. The second episode I was less high on, strictly due to the fact that it felt rushed to me. It felt like we could have really dove into the relationship between Oz and both families and everything else, and Sofia, and stretch that a little bit, which I think is interesting because we have time, we have the episodes, so that's probably just a personal qualm on my front, but I think tonally it continues with what the first episode set up and with what the Batman has delivered. I think we're getting more into the depths of what makes Gotham go around, which is really fascinating to me. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good second episode, but I do think it was a little bit flawed, and I was less high on it than I was the first episode. And obviously, we'll get into everything like that. But I still think that it's a great series so far.
I hear that with the rushed aspect a little bit, because it does, as I'm kind of looking through my notes, and I wrote the review and recap for episode 2. It's now up on agentsfandom.com. It feels like they kind of tried to sprinkle a lot into this. Like, we have the crime family aspects, but then there's also tons of sort of comic Easter eggs they're mixing in throughout it. We get a little bit of Penguin trying to be this benevolent ruler of his community, kind of, that he talked about in the first episode coming to fruition a little bit. It was quite jam-packed. Fat Thor, what do you think about episode 2, and what are your thoughts on the series as a whole so far?
I absolutely loved it, but I will totally agree with Ethan's point. I think, while maybe I wouldn't say necessarily I felt it was rushed, at least from my perspective, I did feel like this episode, it's like, okay, we're getting into the plot like really fast. And I think one of the things, again, like Ethan said, that I really enjoyed about the first episode was it really, at least to me, kind of felt like a slice of life episode of just like following a day in the life of the Penguin, right? Kind of setting things up. So I will agree with that. But overall, I really enjoyed the episode. The tone, I think, is very consistent. It kind of deepens in this episode. And something I love about the series overall, which I've always felt about Batman, whether in the comics or movies, is Gotham is Gotham is a character in itself, like the city of Gotham. And I feel like they're really pulling that through in this series, and they're really making Gotham a central character in this story as well, which I really love.
One of the aspects of the series I love so much is the mystery aspects of it, and we get kind of two parts. We get characters interacting with mysterious elements while the audience knows the answers, but we also get parts of Penguin's plans coming in and impacting the plot in a big way that we necessarily aren't privy to. And the two different layers of those mystery elements are something I'm really enjoying so far. Damon, how about you? What are your thoughts through 2 episodes?
And I've been loving this series. I think this is just a high quality show and something that they put a lot of money into. And I think it's really paying off visually, right? Because this does feel like visually a perfect continuation of the Batman. This doesn't feel like this is cheapened or anything. The acting is still there. The prosthetics on his face still look phenomenal. And I don't want to push back, but for me, I would a little disagree that I felt like this episode is rushed, just because for me, it felt like the amount of things that should have happened in this episode did. Just because when you have a family trying to unravel a murder, like a mafia family like this, right? It's not going to be slow. They're going to act quickly. So one thing after another happens in very rapid order in this. And you got to see Oz's just like last minute turns, having to make decisions that are eventually, he's just digging himself a hole, like as this whole episode goes on. So it was just really fascinating to watch that, and it kept me like entertained the whole time. It kept me into it because of how quickly everything was moving.
Damien, I'll start with you for this next one because my favorite part of the series, while I love the mystery aspect, my favorite part overall is Cristin Milioti.
Yes.
She is incredible as Sofia Falcone. The Hangman is her comics character. They're referencing her as that in the show as well. But as a big How I Met Your Mother fan, talk to me about your thoughts on Cristin Milioti, because I do think she's the literal best part of this show. Her performance is incredible.
It's excellent, and it's really funny considering this character is like a 7-foot tall behemoth in the comics, right? And Cristin Milioti is not. She is a fairly average sized person, right? Like, she's not empowering the scene with her presence because of her size, but just because of how her aura is, and more importantly, her eyes give off just like, I like to say like crazy vibes, but she is a mass murderer. She sends that message just with her eyes alone. And it's so funny because, like you mentioned, with the How I Met Your Mother aspect, we got to see a version of her with Tracy, who's just sweet and kind and just like supposed to be the perfect person. And then you contrast it with this, where you think she can snap at any moment. And all she wants right now is to just see, like, she wants justice for her brother. And then she starts feeling disrespected about it. And you start feeling the tension as the episode goes on. And little moments, like I assume we'll talk about it later, like she has with a little girl. And you're like, at any moment, this woman could snap. She plays it off so well.
I love the contrasting and similar elements between her and the Penguin that kind of go throughout these first two episodes, whereas both of them are very calm and calculated seeming until they're disrespected, and then Penguin's impulsiveness and Sofia's anger just take over. And both of them, you see how they're being disrespected, whether it's the protesters, and for the Penguin, how basically people treat him because of how he looks. You see how prevalent those are in both of their character arcs, and I think they accent each other really well. Fat Thor, what do you think about Cristin Milioti's performance?
I mean, pretty much everything you guys just said. I think she's absolutely amazing. Like Damon said, like her facial acting is just so good. And meaning like what she can portray through her, just again, no dialogue, and like Damon said, like through her eyes, the expression, it's just really great. And I think this episode, we obviously kind of dig a lot deeper into her. And I really love how they're playing with the mental illness that she is suffering from, and how, like in the scene that you guys are alluding to with the little girl, it's like in that moment, she's like, everyone thinks I'm crazy. Okay, I'll be crazy. Right. And I just think she's just such an interesting character. One that I can't really peg where she's going to go with this. Right. Like, again, is she really like as mentally gone as she seems, or part of me thinks that she's also playing into that, like again, like she does at the dinner party. So I think she's amazing. She's one of the most interesting characters among an amazing cast. So yeah, again, just awesome.
She very much seems like calm, in full control of her everything she needs to be, and composed until she starts getting upset, and then it kind of changes into a different person, and the reasons for those nightmares that plague her kind of kick in. Ethan, what do you think of the character, the Hangman, Sofia Falcone, and Cristin Milioti's performance?
Yeah, I think she's great. I mean, I think I echo a lot of what you guys have said. I think she delivers something actually in the first episode that is a little bit lost in the second episode. Because she has a moment of panic right in the first episode where she doesn't know who has put that body in that trunk, and so her world topples on her, and we get to see like this flip in her, where the second episode is much more methodical, and it's impressive that Cristin can do both with her character of Sofia. And I do think obviously like we're now that we're in the second episode, we're gearing up for 6 more episodes of figuring out how the Falcones and the Maronis and the families that want to take over Gotham and how they work. What I find most interesting about her character and her story so far, and her ability to portray it so like nuanced, but also like frightening. Is and this is a theme that we'll come back to as the more that we talk about this episode, but like the show revolves around this idea of legacy. What is Oz's legacy? What is Batman's legacy that he's left to Gotham? What's the legacy of the Maronis? What's the legacy of everybody, all of the people? And so I think the second episode actually does a really good job of diving into that. And obviously Sofia is part of that because she needs to establish her own personal legacy that is outside of the legacy that's already been established by her father. And so I think things are getting really interesting, and that's like a theme I want to come back to the more that we dive into this episode, because TJ, you mentioned like how the mystery aspect of the episode is interesting. Damon, you mentioned production design. Like there's a lot of things working for this show, and what I am like latching onto is the idea of legacy and how Oz is struggling with that at every single turn that he takes, with his mom, with Sofia, with the knife search. Like all of these things play into this idea of how will people remember me, and I think that's fascinating. So to come back to Cristin Milioti, she's great. I think it's awesome.
Sticking with Cristin Milioti, Milioti. Damon, help me out. You probably know best on this one.
For Milioti?
How do you pronounce the last name?
Cristin Milioti.
Milioti? Okay. Thank you. Her intro scene in this episode I found very captivating, where she's going through the hallucinations, she's going through the nightmares, and she's going through essentially therapy with a Dr. Julian Rush. Now, I swear I Googled this name before the episode came out, and I actually saw something in DC Comics, but everywhere I look now is saying there's nothing related to the character. But there's a lot of speculation that this character could actually be someone else. And so I'll pull up an article from friend of the show, Kofi Outlaw, where he mentions that, like, he speculates that this could be a different character. And Theo Rossi, who we of course know from Sons of Anarchy, from the whole Defenders saga on the Marvel Netflix shows, he played Shades in Luke Cage and Daredevil, etc., etc. People are speculating that this could be the iconic DC villain, Hugo Strange. I'm seeing some people describe this character as a love interest. I really like the actor. What do you think is going on, Ethan, with Julian Rush, the character? What do you think of the scene? And also, do you think there's more to this character than meets the eye?
Yeah, you look, I like the scene. I think it's a really interesting juxtaposition to go from the first episode, in which we get this really kind of melodic, lengthy scene with Oz, again, talking about legacy and talking about how people view him. And it's like, it's kind of a wonder for like 7 minutes, and then it explodes, right? And we basically settle into things. We kind of do a similar thing here with Sofia with the opening, but it's much more energized. It's much more frantic. It is totally like the opposite side of the coin that allows you to look at how different Sofia and Oz really are in their mental states and how they view the world around them. I liked it a lot. I tried not to look too much into this character of the Doctor, because I knew I was coming on this pod, and I knew you guys are more knowledgeable than I. And B, I'm not interested in the Penguin as an Easter egg hunt. I'm interested in the Penguin as like an HBO series. That's where I'm coming from this, and I think they have a great opportunity to stick to that. So my ideas of who this character are zero. It's not that I don't care. It's that I know it's going to be revealed, and I know that in 3 episodes I'm going to find out he's not actually a doctor. He works at Arkham, possibly connected to the Riddler. He probably is on probation somehow. Like there's something going on, right? Because like, why does he have this red light behind him, if not to induce her to think about the things of Arkham, so he can understand the crimes committed that only Hangman knows that he's trying to get to, so he can further basically create this massive divide between the Falcones and the Maroni. So I think there's a lot there, and I'm choosing just willingly to not look into any of it and just be like, I find out when I find out. So I don't have an answer for you, TJ. I know you asked me who I think it is.
I love that.
Don't know.
I don't give a damn that you didn't give me the answer I asked for, because you gave me an incredible answer. The speculation with the light and the inducing memories from Arkham, it's incredible stuff. And so it doesn't matter if it's not the answer I asked, if you give a damn good answer like that one. Fat Thor, how about you? What do you think of the scene, the character, and are you willing to speculate that this could be like a Hugo Strange or someone else?
Tej, you know I love a good theory. I love theorizing, so of course I do. But I do want to say really quickly, Ethan, you freaking cooked that answer with the legacy theme.
Thanks.
Like, I love that. Something I didn't really pick up on. So, again, you cooked that. But, yeah, shout out my man Juice. Something is up with him for sure. Like, I immediately thought, as soon as he, like, grabbed her like that, like, I get, like, she was freaking out. But I was like, this is weird. Like, this is definitely crossing some ethical boundaries here in therapy. So I think something's definitely up with him. I love the Hugo Strange shout. I think that would be really cool. Subvert our expectations a little bit, because he obviously doesn't really look like how Hugo Strange typically would look. He's usually kind of an older guy. So I think that would be really cool. But I am going to shout out my own theory. If you guys tuned into last week's episode 1, I threw out that maybe this new drug is somehow linked to Scarecrow, and like the new special ingredient is like the fear toxin or whatever. So playing off of that, he could be what's his name? Crane, Dr. Crane, aka Scarecrow. And
that is in fact the other speculate. I didn't see the theory just because I was out of town while you guys were going, but I love that. And that was the other like potential person I thought people speculating he could be was Scarecrow.
Yeah, I think that totally fits. I think it kind of sticks with the more grounded theme of the character. Like, he's not this kind of outlandish kind of guy, which he wasn't really in the Nolan movies either. But again, I think that would fit. And while I don't really have all the dots to connect everything, I think it would be cool.
Damon, what do you think?
All right, before I go on this, I just want to say I totally agree with Ethan. This show in particular, I am not interested in like, oh, is this person going to be this character from Batman comic? Oh, I'm along for the HBO DC ride, right? If there's like some little hints here and there, there's really only one character in this entire series I kind of just want to see name dropped because it makes sense for this universe, and that's Tony Zuko. That's it. That is literally the only name drop I even just kind of want to hear, because that would kind of like set up, oh, maybe we're doing like the Robin thing and the Batman too, right? That's how you sneak that in. There is a...
we'll get to it a little bit later, but one thing I want to touch on is I actually have the exact same mindset as you guys, and I don't really feel like the show was letting me. And there's a very specific name drop later on that we will get to, that it's like, my initial thought was like, hey, this is gonna be really grounded. This is HBO. They changed his name to Cobb instead of Cobblepot. They're going full grounded mode here, so that when the Brave
Cobblepot's too crazy for Gotham City.
I think he can still be Cobblepot. Like, I stand on that. Why they call him Oz too, but we see this episode is full name.
They also
Oswald.
Say Oswald. Yeah,
so
and they call
I think they could
once.
just be shorten it. I'll just defend that.
But like, regardless, I think like this is going to be like the grounded, and then so that they can go a little more fantastical with the DCU, Brave and the Bold. I think that's how they're going to handle having two Batmans as once, as one will be very out there and the other will be as grounded as possible. But there are some specific name drops coming later that we'll talk about that make me go like, damn, I can't help but theorize. Back to you, Damon.
Okay. So as I said, I don't really care about this, but let me El Muerto the crap out of this for everybody, because what's this guy's name again? Can somebody just say it for me?
Dr. Julian Rush.
Okay, let me tell you that there's a character in DC Comics who's a villain whose name is Rush.
That's who I found. That's who I found when I.
He's been in a whopping, get this, guys, a whopping, tied with El Muerto, 3 DC comic books in main continuity, and his whole thing is he's a Green Arrow villain. The end.
I looked that up and I found him when I was writing my recap, and all of those are totally gone, buried under all the Hugo Strange articles from people speculating in this series. But we mentioned how Gotham is a character in this series, and I thought that was very interesting. While we're going through like news shorts, right? We're seeing like news clips in this episode where crime has gone up 42% since the Riddler blasted the seawall. I think it's really interesting that we get to see the full-on Gotham as a character and how this is a direct continuation of the Batman universe. We're not seeing the Batman here, but the shit that went down, it's still affecting these characters here. And I actually thought it was super cool as well. I noticed it more in the first episode than this one, how most of the business they're going through is happening during the daytime in the sunlight, because you're probably not going to meet the Batman in the middle of a day at a mansion. You know what I mean? You're going to see him in an alley when it's dark. And so I do like that a lot of the criminality stuff is happening during the day where it makes sense that we're not going to see the Batman. But Ethan, I actually want to throw it back to you here to go through the Maroni and Falcone politics a little bit, because you brought up that's what you found very interesting. And one of the parts, I think the prison scenes really amplify this aspect of the show, but I'm always kind of on the edge of my seat because I feel like anything can go down at any point. They set the tone for that in the first episode where Penguin just pulls out the gun and shoots Alberto, and that feels heightened to me when they're in the jail cell and Penguin's trying to give his plans, and it kind of seems like they might just jump him at any second, but he handles himself very well. So what do you think about specifically the Maroni plan and getting them involved?
Yeah, I quickly want to say something to what you said about the connection to the Batman. I actually liked the connection more in the second episode, where basically Oz is like, I don't think the mayor is going to have what it takes to do anything about the city. I think little tiny drops like that are so fantastic in a script that is not very focused on the Batman, which I think is like to its point. And so I liked that a lot. I love a lot of things about the family dynamics that are going on between the Falcones and the Maronis. I love the fact that it's kind of like a Persian mob that we get. If you watch like the behind the scenes that come with this episode, they kind of dive into that a little bit, which I think is a pretty cool aspect that they bring forth. What I find so interesting is that they operate in such thematically similar but actionably different ways as families, because basically when Oz brings that ring to Sal, right, in the prison, Oz knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows that it is impossible for Sal to say no to being the boss. And then when he goes back, it does feel like he's going to get jumped, right? It feels like this really big ambush on Oz. And I think there's another dynamic here that's really interesting that I hope plays out later in the series. Sal's wife calls Oz a dog and says that dogs can be trained. And I think there's a lot to that. And I think, again, that cycles back to this idea of like, how does society view these families? How do people view Sal? How do people view Sofia? How does Gotham view these people? Because maybe it's not actually them making the decisions about everything that's going on, which I think is a very interesting kind of point to this. But like what Oz is doing with their family dynamics, he knows exactly how to push their buttons, and like he knows what to do for each family. And I think it's really interesting at the end, especially during like the knife search, we kind of get this really forthright thematic idea of like, we are a family that needs to maintain our family values. We do not get fucked with, is pretty much how it goes. And they are so intense on that. And Oz knows that. And so he knows that he can take advantage of that. So I think there's a lot of great like inter-family dynamics that are at play. And I tread cautiously forward for this series, because I hope they don't stray from that idea of like it is actually a family drama, and it's not like a shoot 'em up car hijacking every episode, which was fun, but not a highlight of the episode in my opinion. So yeah, I love what they're doing with the families.
I couldn't agree more. The family crime drama is by far the more interesting aspect of this to me, as opposed to the action shoot 'em up stuff. Because if I'm watching action shoot 'em up stuff, I want the Batman to be there. That's essentially what it comes down to for me.
Can I say one more thing really, really quickly? Because I know we're gonna move on to the next stuff. One of the notes that I had written down is this really interesting moment that that Oz has with Can you remind me that the kid's name? What's the kid's name?
Victor.
Again? Victor. Yeah, he has with Vic, where basically he tells Vic like, Carmine kept me around as a driver. He literally says, and the rest is history. I know we're being telegraphed a little bit, like, oh, Vic is Oz's driver, and Oz is going to rule Gotham one day, and like we understand that, but like that's so interesting to me because it's not about Vic, it's not about the legacy that Oz leaves over Gotham. It's about the legacy that Oz leaves within his own mind and with the mind of Vic, and how he will be remembered for the same things that Carmine did, and how he treated the people that he trusted. And I think that's really fascinating about how Oz's mind works in this show.
And I think it goes to add to that as well. It's such an interesting thing where he wants to be specifically remembered as benevolent. You know, like he told his story to Alberto and he's like, yeah, you could be a ruler like your dad was where everybody's afraid of you. But let me tell you about the guy who was in charge of my neighborhood. And he gave people money when he needed it and everybody respected him. And Alberto was essentially like, yeah, that sounds like bullshit. But that's who Penguin is clearly trying to be with the way he treats the drug dealers, the sex workers, the people in his neighborhood. When they get on his bad side, like when Vic screws up, he throws him in a fucking grave and he's like, never screw up again. But it's a very interesting how he treats everybody before they get on his bad side is a very interesting contrast to that. And you can find my interview with Victor Aguilar, Rhenzy Feliz, up on our YouTube page. He talks about the Penguin working with Colin Farrell, the role of Victor, as well as his time on Marvel's The Runaways, where he played Alex Rider, as well as Encanto, because he is, of course, the voice of Camilo as well. And then we talked about how he wants to actually play Miles Morales in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so make sure you check that one out. One of the aspects of the family dynamic I find interesting so far is I find the Maronis way more intimidating than the Falcones. The only aspect that's not is that Salvatore is in jail, but even then it seems like he kind of controls the jail that he's in. Without Carmine, I don't find the Falcones very intimidating outside of Sofia. Sofia's scared the shit out of me, but like the biggest downside to this episode for me was the introduction of Luca. And even though Oz was like, yeah, you don't have to worry about Luca. He's the worst. He's soft. But it just was a very underwhelming, I don't give a damn about you at all kind of character for me. I kind of thought he was going to be another one who was introduced and immediately killed off. What do you think of the Fat Thor? What do you think of the dynamics between the Maronis, the Falcones, how Oz is playing them against each other?
I really love it, and I think going off of your point of like the mystery, that's like really what hooks me with it is I think it's just really smart how they're playing the mystery aspect in the sense of like we know what happened, like Oz killed the guy, but the mystery is like continuously figuring out like how much is Oz playing this? Like how much is he playing each family and how much is it just like you were saying kind of responding to the environment? I think we see that perfectly with the knife, but he also had a plan, right? So I love that, and I always say, you know, obviously we come for the gunfights and the car chases, right? But what makes people stay are things like this, the drama elements and like what's going on between these families. So I think that they're doing it great. And I also want to say just really quickly, funny thing, we're talking about this series being so grounded and like realistic. Before Penguin goes to meet with Maroni, we see him chugging the Pepto-Bismol. And as a fellow big boy myself, that's a classic burly boy move. So I thought that was really funny. And again, just went to the realism because, like I said, that's a big boy move right there.
Just stressed out, dealing with some mega heartburn, and just pounding back that Pepto.
Dude, it gets you, man. That stress brings it all up.
I was texting Damon while I was earlier in this week because one of the things I was just throwing on in the background as I was writing was the 2000s Cartoon Network The Batman, and it was so funny. In episode 2 comes up, he's fighting the Penguin and he's trying to like fist fight with him, and he can't catch him because the Penguin is too quick. And he just is bouncing around everywhere. And I'm like, in what world is the Penguin supposed to be able to physically match up in a fight with the Batman and be too fast for him? But it was a pretty funny little clip. Damon, what do you think about the family dynamics? And I specifically want to go to you for the next one because I have some theorizing for you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, look, the family dynamics are what make this show, and I totally agree with all of you that say that. Although I did enjoy that little hijack car, shoot 'em up stuff as well, because I was almost looking at this, like going in and be like, how the hell is Oz going to get out of this one? Because that's almost going to be like this entire show. It's like I'm looking Oz get into a situation. I'm like, bro, how are you going to get out of this?
He needs to
Like,
stay out of cars.
At what point are you gonna get caught? Because you're just digging yourself deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. So I also totally agree with you, TJ, as well, though, about the intimidation factor. Because like Johnny Viti's not like scary. He almost looks like he's like way over his head too, right? But when Sofia's in the room, everyone shuts up when Sophia's in the room. That's like an actual intimidation factor. So if you take her out of it, yeah, like the Maroni is like, they feel like they got their shit together. But when Sophia's there, all of a sudden everyone hushes.
And which is kind of to her own point, probably why she should be the one in charge of that family, because their presence isn't scaring anybody off. And if, like Ethan said, your main family value is you can't fuck with us, you need someone who strikes fear into the hearts of others that you can't fuck with them because they're terrifying. I want to touch on Vic quickly. Like I said, you can find our interview with Rhenzy Feliz up on the Agents Fandom YouTube page. Smash the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're watching us there right now. I'm very interested into where his character goes from here. I think Rhenzy's doing an awesome job. I think I think one of the reasons why Penguin is kind of, even when he screws up, not giving up on him, as he sees a lot of himself in him. Rhenzy described Vic as, even though he kind of comes across like he may not be very smart because he doesn't talk a lot, seems very easily intimidated, but in reality, he's a listener. He's sitting back, he's watching, he's listening, and he's learning. And so very much like the Penguin in that aspect, I think, as well. And to your point, Damon, where it's like, I kind of want to see how Oz gets out of this situation. He has a vibe to him that just reminds me of a little bit of Jack Sparrow, where it's like from the Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Where he just walks into a situation where it's like, oh, how did I get here? How am I going to get out? I'm just going to stumble my way out of here, and it works. That's like, he has that vibe that reminds me of that a little bit. I think Penguin's a lot more kind of calculated, but it has almost like the same, oh shit, what now? Whoop, 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 the kind of vibe that Jack Sparrow has. The name I wanted to throw to you, Damon.
Okay, I know where you're going with this.
Like I said earlier, one of the aspects I find very interesting about the Penguin's character is how he wants to be a very benevolent leader for his community. And I think the way he treats the sex workers around him, I think, is a very interesting aspect of his character. And his main girl, Eve, he goes to Eve in episode 1 for an alibi because he killed Alberto. She's worried because she's scared of Sofia. But Eve, what's Eve's last name, Damon?
It's Karlo.
Now, what infamous Batman villain has the last name of Karlo?
A little character called Clayface.
Yeah,
Rumored
baby.
to be the villain in the next Batman movie. Do you think that, like, I can't help but speculate when I hear
I'm with you on this one,
names.
man. Like,
Do you
when you
think
have
this-
a name like that, right? When you have a name like that, you got to do something with it, or we're just doing full-on nods, right? And if we are doing full-on nods, that's fine too. I won't be upset. This isn't one that, like, I'd be terribly upset. But there's gotta be something there, because it wouldn't also surprise me, because we know how Clayface can work, where it's like all the girls are also a part of him in a way, like, you know, because that's how Clayface works. And this also isn't like a new thing for Clayface, right? Clayface can be whatever Clayface wants to be.
Wait, are you guys saying that she is Clayface?
Oh yeah,
that's what I'm asking. I'm pointing.
See, I
want to know.
Like it was his mom or something, like a relative.
No.
But her being Clayface, oh my, that's a theory.
Karlo is like one of Clayface's like aliases.
Alters, yeah,
it's one of Clayface's aliases, and this is like not a new thing for Clayface to like go as like a woman, because that happens like fairly often, right? So it's very possible, and also kind of makes it a little funny, because imagine Clayface is the only thing Penguin can like kind of get with. Sorry, Penguin.
No, that's crazy.
Salvatore, what's your take on it? Do you think this could? What was your thought process pre Damon's theory of, is this a sister? Is this a mother? Because we know Clayface is going to be, or is it a gender bent Clayface, or is it the normal Clayface disguised as a woman? Because all of these are kind of possibilities in a world where they're likely not going to make him a big clay monster, and probably more likely to make him a master of disguise.
Honestly, I know like I'm usually like the breakdown guy for most things, but I didn't even catch that her last name was Karlo. So this is all new to me. And again, when you first said it, my immediate thought was a relative. So, but I love a crazy theory. So let's screw it. Let's go crazy. Make it, all of them are Clayface, right? That would also be cool. But yeah, if we're sticking like kind of with the grounded elements, I would say like mother, relative. One of Clayface's origins in the comics has a lot. His dad was a makeup artist as well, so I think they could fit in like that being his mom too. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's news. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, but Clayface is one of my favorite Batman villains that I think does not get enough love. So anything to bring him in, I'm all game for.
Damon, can I get that Clayface impression one more time? Because that was wonderful.
Clayface.
That sounds exactly
That's a little
like
Harley Quinn-ish in there.
I was gonna say that sounds exactly like the voice from Harley Quinn, and I absolutely love it. Ethan, if you have any thoughts on the Clayface theory, feel free to get them in. But one of the things I find kind of ties back to our very first conversation about the pace of this episode seemed very fast, like they're just sort of jumping right in. Is it seems like they wanted to get to the point where Sofia and Oz are no longer antagonists to each other, but are on a little bit of a team up and are going side by side. And we get there by the end of this movie. What do you think the impact of that by the end of this episode? What do you think will be the impact of that going forward?
I personally think it is. I want to say Oz's demise, but like it's not really his demise. But I do think it's his internal demise for sure. I think that, and I want to go back to like what you were talking about with Victor. I really do think that not only the reason that he keeps Vic around and so close to him is because he can bitch about pickles and cilantro, but it's because it gives him someone below him, right? It gives him someone to enact his power on, because he kind of doesn't know where do you go? How do you go up? Like, how do I tackle these families? Where do we go? And I thought what was really interesting about season 2 is that he asks Vic specifically to like do what he wanted to do. Vic chickens out. And so Oz has to think on his feet. And you TJ, you were mentioning like this kind of Jack Sparrow energy. And I see what you're saying, but I disagree, because I think that is a really good example of Oz actually being a bit smarter than he thinks he is. He doesn't need to rely on Vic to do it all. He can think on his feet, and he can drop the knife in someone else's pocket and get out of Dodge right in front of Sofia and everybody else. So I think the way that I'm interpreting this, and the way that I hope it keeps continuing, Oz is flying mightily close to the sun here. And I think that Sofia is that sun. He loves what it does to him. He loves what it does to the relationship with his mom that so clearly has dementia, and he even makes a couple of nods to it in this episode where, Sofia at this team up point says, like, what did your mom, what got her around? Like, what changed things for you guys to go out and dance? And he said, I like to think it was me. And so, like, Oz thinks a lot of himself. He also degrades himself because when he's around his mom, he doesn't think that he is good enough to carry on the legacy of the Cobblepot name and, like, take over Gotham like she wants him to. So this team up with Oz and Sofia is really interesting to me in the fact that I really do think they're misaligned on their powers. They're very, very different in how they view Gotham and how they view legacy and action and things like this. And they actually have very different goals in mind, in my opinion. But it felt significantly rushed to, like, get to this by the end of episode 2. Felt really, really, really fast for me. And I thought the visuals of the scene were actually really, really good. You kind of have these 2 elongated hallways that they're standing fundamentally on either side, which I thought was interesting. So there's a lot of visual storytelling going on, but, like, we get there so quickly. Think about where we were at the end of episode 1. Oz was tied up being tortured by Sofia. And then, like I said, like, she has a drop moment. I understand that, like, she has a flip moment, but even so, to, like, get there so quickly to be like, you want to team up? I don't think Oz has earned that quite yet. And so I'm a little apprehensive moving forward about what this means. And that's why I say, like, I tread lightly moving forward with the family drama aspect of things, because it's like we already naturally ratchet things up another level now that Sofia and Oz are kind of in cahoots, and we lose maybe a lot of the groundwork that we didn't spend time building. So I'm nervous, but I'm also very excited. I think it's a cool prospect.
Well, I kind of feel like he's teaming up with her at this point out of necessity. And I'm with you. It is a little bit of that complex, a little bit of, I need to show that I'm good enough to this mother figure, this woman figure. But the part that I find so interesting is, I love your analogy of he's flying too close to the sun now, because I think Sofia kind of eliminates his greatest superpower, because she has the same one as he does, and that's getting into a room of powerful men, being smarter than them while they are underestimating you. Because they look at your appearance, they see Penguin, and they go, this is an underling. This is a prototypical underling. I'm not worried about him. And then he plots and he ploys, he ends up killing them, and he takes their spot, moves his way up the ladder. I don't think he has that ability to do that with Sofia. Now, he has found kind of ways by the end to get her to soften up to him and get her to come around, but I think she sees through his bullshit better than most. And I think somebody like a Maroni is sitting there thinking like he's seeing through the Penguin's bullshit, but he's got contingency plans on contingency plans that are ready for Maroni's actions. I don't think he can predict Sofia's actions, and I think that's going to get him into a lot of trouble going forward. Fat Thor, what do you think of their partnership?
I think it's, again, for me, goes into that mystery angle that I was talking about, in the sense of, like, I can't really tell what the plan is. Like you said, is it just kind of situational? He's taking advantage of, like, he saw how they treated her in that room, and so he saw his advantage to kind of use her and work with her. Or does he have, again, this kind of master plan? Like, did he always plan to team up with her for some, end game that we'll find out in a couple episodes? So it just really interests me. And again, going back to Sofia's character as well, like we were saying, like, what is she going to do? Is she, it's kind of the same thing. Does she have this kind of master plan for Oz? Or is she, again, kind of situational? Like, I need him right now, so we'll see how this goes. So I really like just the whole thing. I think it really set us off on episode 2 on a good note, to where I'm really excited to see, again, where that goes next episode.
Damon, how about you?
I do agree that this teaming up at the end felt a little quick for, this is 8 episodes, because I had just looked it up. I was like, if this is 6 episodes, then yeah, maybe by now they would have to team, but this is 8. So I think this is something that should have probably happened at the end of next episode, because then that feels like the perfect conclusion to the first arc of the series in a way. Instead of it just being one long drawn out story, you actually have like little arcs in between. But I will push back a little bit for what Fat Thor said, because I really do not think he's planning much of this well in ahead, or at least when he does, things come up. Like, he had no idea Sofia was gonna show up. That really drew just like another bump in the road, and then another bump in the road, another bump in the road. So I do agree with TJ when he said, yeah, he has to think on his feet a lot, and he is proving that he is smarter than what a lot of people think about him, or he's just showing that the people around him are much dumber than they really are too. It's maybe a little bit of both in a way. But what I really find interesting between the two of them teaming up is they do have a mutual goal, and that is more just to be respected. How they're trying to get there is two completely separate paths.
Couldn't agree more. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, subscribe to the Agents Fandom wherever you get your podcasts. You can find our socials right down there below, at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. We will be back for another episode of The Penguin next week when we're breaking down episode 3. On Wednesday, we will be live immediately after Agatha All Along with the incredible Jamie Dirac to talk about episode 4. And we got Comic Corner dropping every week as well, as well as the Fellowship of Fandom with Fat Thor, and a rotating crew of guests, usually the Listen 3000 crew, talking some Rings of Power on Amazon Prime. You can also check out agentsoffandom.com for all the latest and greatest in TV, movie, gaming, etc. But I want to kind of take notes of this first page right here because it's a pretty cool one for the podcast. We got my recap of Penguin right here, recap of Agatha All Along right here, Fat Thor with the Rings of Power article, and Ethan with one from Tiff. Absolutely crushing these articles lately right now. See a lot of familiar names up on there, but I want to take this time to give an extra shout out to Damon, because you don't see Damon's name everywhere here. Damon hasn't been writing. What has he been doing? And he has really helped take our YouTube content to another level recently. This is the very first show that we are, the Agents Fandom, are official YouTube partners. We finally get to monetize the pages. We have reached all the goals. The application has been sent in, and we are official YouTube partners now. So it's never been more important to smash the like button and subscribe. But I want to shout out to Damon because we have, for a long time, have had a lot of people who put in a lot of work, podcasting, making videos, etc. But Damon has really taken the lead for scheduling, organizing, making sure we're on top of things. And so I want to give Damon his due, because we would not be YouTube partners today without you, my friend. So really great work.
Thanks, man.
Of course. Check out Damon and Fat Thor on the Comic Corner, Fellowship of Fandom, and Penguin, Agatha, all these great shows on the Agents of Fandom podcast feed, and Ethan stuff up on agentsoffandom.com reviewing TIFF. And what do you got coming up, my friend, on the A24 podcast and the Movie Draft podcast?
Yeah, like I said, we got some exciting stuff coming in October for the Movie Draft pod. We do have a Coppola family draft, which is wild. We've recorded it, and it is completely unhinged, which is very, very exciting, and should honestly expect nothing less from Coppola and his family members. We have a Batman draft coming up, and then at the end of October, we're celebrating spooky season with a little A24 horror collaborative draft. So be sure to tune in to the Movie Draft podcast. And then speaking of A24, they do have a couple of new movies coming out in October. We'll be talking about We Live in Time and A Different Man. And then we'll be doing a couple horror movies as well. And then before you know it, we're going to turn into 24 minutes of the Oscars like we do every year here at the end of the year. So if you're interested in the Academy Awards, be sure to tune into the pod for that. It's coming up sooner than you think.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in this week, everyone, as we break down The Penguin. Drop us your theories and thoughts on the show in chat, whether that be on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, etc. But we thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Peace.